Hello everyone, my name is Slade, I'll be your host, and welcome to Star Wars Did You Know? Before we begin today's topic, I would just like to say a big thank you to everyone. This is my 50th video on this channel, which is really cool for me, and it's why I chose the topic I did today, because it's something that I really like, and I wanted to do something special for myself for the 50th video. And I also would like to let everyone know that yes, this channel is still alive. It is still going forwards. It's been kind of slow. I don't think I've done a video now in about 5-ish months, roughly. I think February was when I did my last video. It's now the very last day of July as I'm recording this. And that's because the pandemic happened. I had just moved right before the lockdown in the United States went into effect, and it's been a little stressful between work, having moved, and just getting everything ordered. I haven't been in the headspace to make any lore videos, although I do have a series of topics lined up that I would like to do. So without further ado, here is today's video, and I'll try to get back to that one-a-month schedule going forwards. But thank you everyone for your patience. I hope you liked today's video, and let's carry on. The Thai Interceptor, also known as the Thai IN Starfighter, and nicknamed Squints by rebel pilots, was built by Sinar Fleet Systems, and was an advanced form of Thai starfighter. It improved upon the original TIE fighter design with its dagger-like solar panels, which increased pilot visibility, and reduced the target profile of the craft itself, as well as increasing maneuverability in dogfights. Coupled with a high speed and the aforementioned maneuverability was a weapons package that was highly variable. The standard TIE Interceptor armament was 4 high-accuracy laser cannons on the tips of its solar wings. In addition to the standard weapons loadout, it had 2 additional hardpoints on its chin for additional beam weaponry, and could mount 2 limited-capacity Warhead Launchers on the cheeks of the cockpit, making it an incredibly dangerous craft, with a high level of customization for its pilots. Despite its impressive flight characteristics and potentially heavy armament, the TIE Interceptor, like many TIE designs, lacked a hyperdrive, had no shield, and no life support for the pilot. However, despite these limitations, the craft would be used by the most elite starfighter formations within the Empire, as well as having a custom version made specifically for the Emperor's elite Royal Guard. It is unclear exactly when the TIE Interceptor entered mass production. We do know that there were at very least prototypes prior to the Battle of Yavin, to the point that rebel agents recognized TIE Interceptors even if they were not widely deployed. Imperial doctrine called for a standard Star Destroyer to have a complement of 1 TIE Interceptor squadron, 1 TIE Bomber squadron, and 4 TIE Fighter squadrons, although how widespread this was versus just being a doctrinal order is unclear. However, we do know that in 1 BBY, a massive slaughter happened at the hands of the Rebel Alliance's newly acquired X-Wing starfighters. The Lightspeed Panthers were a starfighter wing with the Rebel Alliance that had just been issued with the new T-65B X-Wing starfighter, and during the 9-month Feihu campaign, they accounted for 286 TIE starfighters with a loss of only 4 of their own. The result of this campaign was that Imperial planners realized that the TIE starfighter was no longer sufficient to deal with the growing rebellion, and that the until now low numbers of TIE Interceptors would have to be increased in order to counter the Rebel Alliance's new starfighter advantage. Following the Battle of Yavin, it was decided that all Imperial TIE fighter squadrons would eventually be replaced by the TIE Interceptor. However, this planned replacement of the TIE starfighter would never be fully completed, and by the time of the Battle of Endor, only 20% of the Empire's TIE starfighters had been replaced by the TIE Interceptor, with many squadrons only having 1 TIE Interceptor for every 3 TIE starfighters. The result of this was that many squadrons, having only been issued a handful of TIE Interceptors, would issue those TIE Interceptors to their flight leaders, resulting in mixed squadrons, where you'd have a single TIE Interceptor leading 2 TIE starfighters, and these sorts of formations were common throughout the Galactic Civil War in many TIE fighter squadrons. Despite these shortages, the Empire was able to field numerous fully equipped TIE Interceptor squadrons and wings, such as the 128th TIE Interceptor Squadron and the 181st Fighter Wing. However, following the Battle of Endor, with the Emperor's death and the resulting chaos that came about because of it, the TIE Interceptor was never able to achieve full replacement of the TIE Starfighter, and many squadrons and wings would have to soldier on using the TIE Starfighter instead of the TIE Interceptors they were intended to be using. And formations such as the 181st and the 128th became increasingly rare as attrition took its toll on the Imperial forces. By the time of the Thrawn campaign, The value of TIE interceptors was seen by many Imperial warlords and officers that continued to fight against the New Republic, and many of these forces had equipped their TIE interceptors with shields in an attempt to preserve both the valuable craft and the pilots who flew them. This trend of equipping TIE interceptors with shields continued well beyond the Thrawn campaign, and by the time of the Imperial Remnant, the TIE Interceptor was well established as a shielded starfighter, having been realized as a valuable asset by the officers using them in combat. And that wraps up the lore of the TIE Interceptor. Now I'd like to take a moment to voice my own opinion on this craft. It is a personal favorite of mine. I've always liked it ever since I first saw it in Return of the Jedi, and I loved being able to play it for the first time in Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Personally, I think this is actually the best starfighter that was mass-produced by the Galactic Empire, and that includes designs like the TIE Avenger, the TIE Hunter, the TIE Defender. And I think the Empire had concentrated on making the TIE Interceptor rather than these more advanced designs. They might have actually had a war-winning starfighter that was arguably the best dogfighter of the Galactic Civil War, and I'll give you my reasons for that. First and foremost, we're going to address the most obvious advantage the TIE Interceptor had, was its high speed and high maneuverability. While the A-Wing was faster than the TIE Interceptor was far more maneuverable. It was said to be able to fly circles quite literally around X-Wings. This meant that in a dogfight situation, the X-Wing was at a supreme disadvantage, with its only advantage being the fact that it had shields and a heavier hull plating. However, even this advantage would be negated later on, when officers like Grand Admiral Thrawn started to give their TIE Interceptors shielding, meaning they were able to better survive in dogfights against New Republic starfighters. When coupled with the fact that a TIE Interceptor could carry up to 6 beam weapons, typically a combination of laser and blaster cannons, but in addition I'm sure it could mount an ion cannon or two, meant this starfighter carried just as much firepower as more advanced TIE designs like the TIE Hunter, the TIE Avenger, and the TIE Defender, which were all significantly more expensive to produce. In addition to these 6 beam weapon hardpoints, we must also remember that the TIE Interceptor could carry Warhead Launchers. The standard configuration did not include them, but it was able to carry them, meaning that it was capable of not only engaging with its lasers and blasters, but it could also engage more hardened targets like capital ships, starports, and even planetary targets when equipped with warheads. And it is in this configuration that we see how the TIE Interceptor could have been the most deadly Imperial starfighter available to the Empire's starfighter pilots, as evidenced by the fact that the Emperor's Royal Guard flew these modified TIE Interceptors, which had shields, had hyperdrives, and probably had 6 beam weapon hardpoints and maybe even warhead launchers. When you combine all these factors into one package, you have a starfighter that can outfly the X-Wing, is more heavily armed than the A-Wing with comparable speed, and in addition, is nearly as maneuverable as more advanced TIE designs like the TIE Hunter, the TIE Defender, and the TIE Avenger, but is more economical and able to be mass-produced in greater numbers. I would argue the Empire's greatest option when it came to their starfighters was not to produce more advanced TIE fighter designs, but was to produce a single advanced TIE Interceptor that could have equipped multiple squadrons in multiple ways, equipped with shields, a high beam weapon count, warhead launchers, and even a hyperdrive if they desired to do so. And that is why, despite the fact that I love some of the more advanced TIE designs such as the ones I've mentioned here, I do think the Empire messed up and should have just built an advanced TIE Interceptor as their primary starfighter. It would have given them a package that was cheaper than the X-Wing and any of those advanced TIE fighter designs, as well as able to match any ship the Rebel Alliance could throw at it. But that is just my opinion. What do you think? Do you like the TIE Interceptor? Should the Empire have mass-produced it in the advanced form that I am mentioning? Or do you think there was merit to building the more advanced starfighter designs? As always, I am your host Slade. This has been my 50th video on this channel. Thank you for watching. I look forward to making more in the future.